well, everybody is in the same boat with all the current difficulties, but despite all the quarantine and so on, I think that we have good news. So good news are that even in the countries which were worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic, such as Italy and Spain, we have really good record. In Italy, we had a child who has been ill and recovered very well, the entire family, but overall, the other families in Italy and Spain, everybody has been well. So, which is a really good illustration that our consistent focus on fundamentals, that working with the respiratory system, visceral systems, total health benefits and the total health basis, that brings good results. And also Belgium, right? Belgium is also one of the countries which were worst hit in that sense. So that's really good. However, it's important to keep your focus. This is essential. Even though no one has been affected yet, we have to realize we're still living in the difficult times. Difficult in which sense? That so already by now there is a consensus among the epidemiologists and the medical community that overall this whole virus is with us to stay, meaning that we're gonna have 50, 60, 70% of the population finally who have to get through it, right? So get this illness and get immune to it. So since this thing can bring the unexpected responses, and to a great extent the coronavirus as the difficulty and the trickiness of this whole thing is the way that it affects the fascia of the lungs, right? So this is what you really have to understand, that if you look at the description, this is the atypical, not typical respiratory challenge, not typical pneumonia. What is not typical about it? The not typical about it is that it affects the fascia of the lungs, the so-called interstitium. So an easy image for you to keep in mind, right? So what is a standard pneumonia? Standard pneumonia, if you look at the the lungs and the alveoli as the grape, right? So you see as the bunch of grapes, and there is a grape stalk, connecting them. So now you just kind of invert the grapes, and then you can see the whole picture. So what happens with the standard pneumonia? Standard pneumonia, you've got a certain cluster which affects the grapes. And it affects the grapes, it could be very intense, but it would be specific grapes. The stalk stays alright. And that's why, because the stalk that connects, right, these branches that connect the individual grapes, that's why usually pneumonias are localized. Now, what happens with what we see with the COVID-19, the whole coronavirus caused pneumonias? That it's the opposite. That it's the stalk, it's the branches which are being affected, the interstitium which connects the individual alveoli, so the individual grapes. So that's why it could be hidden, right? So people don't feel anything to begin with, right? That's why people can get to the point of low saturations, the low oxygenation, but still don't realize that there is a problem. And that's why, because it distributes, it spreads to this grape stalk, that's why, the branches could be affected simultaneously. So it could be the total lung thing together. So that's what makes this whole virus thing tricky. And of course, when we know that the child with cerebral palsy is still way more fragile than the healthy child, right? And then if it's a severe cerebral palsy, it could be even, as fragile as middle-aged or even more aged individuals. That's why we really have to keep this in mind, right? So that what we get with the risks of the coronavirus and what we get with the risks of the COVID is that it's the fascia style of pneumonia. So what are we doing with ABR? We are addressing the fascia component. So that's why we really encourage you to keep working.